Okay, so it's another week later. I decided I wanted to come back and do my other favorite classic Doctor, who is the third Doctor, John Pertwee, 1970 to 75. I love this era. I really like the unit stories. I like that there is a. I actually like that he's Earthbound for the majority of this kind of era, and there's kind of an arc about that, and I'll get into that. But I like that it was basically the first soft reboot of the show. They At the end of season 6 with the what is it, the War Games, the second Doctor is sort of punished by the Time Lords, first appearance of the Time Lords, and he is made to forced to regenerate into a face not of his choosing, and that all happens after or off screen after the end of the series, but he's sort of exiled to Earth and he sort of stumbles out. So the first one is I'm doing something a little bit different. So I put everything just in chronological order of airing, um, just to make it easier for me to remember. Because a lot of these are really small. I can't. It's hard for me to read them without squinting or something like that. But I can remember the general order of the serials. So the first one, Spearhead from Space, that's A tier. That's one of the best. It's the only original Doctor original Doctor Who serial that is filmed entirely on film. Like it's not video, it's not to tape or anything like that. It's actual film. So from start to finish, a lot of the times you'll see film used in sort of location shots, and then the studio shots will be to tape. All of Spearhead from Space is on film, so it was easy for them to upgrade it to like 4K or HD or whatever, and it looks fantastic. First appearance of the Autons, first appearance of the Third Doctor, and it's sort of the establishment of the unit family, right? So you have the Doctor, the Brigadier, his assistant, which changes. So it starts out being Liz Shaw, then it's Joe Grant, then it's Sarah Jane. Brigadier Mike Yates, Colonel something Shaw or something like that. There's like 5 or 6 characters that are recurring through this era, and so it kind of becomes an ensemble show. The first series, so series 7, the first series of the Third Doctor, is very much, it's Earthbound. It's more tense. It's more serious, even though it is still it's a kids show or whatever. But it feels more like Quatermass, which is sort of a contemporary series about a scientist, a super genius that's living on Earth and dealing with problems. So it was kind of their take on Quatermass, because they were probably compared at the time. Anyway, Spirit of Space is really fantastic. It's going to be hard for me to say anything from season 7 is less than an A. I think I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Oh man, it's tough. Silurians is awesome. It's longish. There's only 4 series in season 7, but they're all they're kind of on the long side. Silurians is such a Doctor Who idea that there are these creatures that have lived on Earth for or existed on Earth for tens of millions of years. They were the first kind of sentient beings on Earth, so they cohabit the Earth, but we just don't know about them. And so instead of defeating the aliens, he's trying to make peace with them. This idea is carried on in the new Who, but yeah, this is the first appearance. The Silurians look goofy, but that's par for the course in Doctor Who. Um, but he's basically the Doctor is basically fighting against Unit this whole time, and that's one of the interesting things about the Unit era is that the Doctor is sort of an anarchist, maybe a pacifist. He certainly isn't very pro authority, but he's kind of stuck in this situation where he has to work with them so that he can possibly repair his TARDIS, which has been um, damaged, so he can't leave Earth. So that's kind of the contrivance they create so that to make him be part of this team. It really is just like this whole first series is like a total reinvention of the show, and it's all good. If anything, I think that the weak point is probably Ambassadors of Death, which is still a very good series. I think it's just the weakest of the 4 I think Inferno is probably number two. Oh man, Inferno is great because you get that alternate universe. Inferno, I'm not exactly sure what the something about digging deep into the ground or something like that. But there's some sort of nuclear whatever. There's a portal to a parallel dimension, and the Doctor gets trapped there because he's experimenting with his TARDIS and trying to get it to work. And he slips into an alternate dimension by accident. And in this alternate dimension, all the same characters there, but they're all evil. They're working for the evil version of Unit or whatever. And so I'm kind of going off of there's a lot of these that I haven't watched for a long time, but I have seen all of them at some time. Most of them at least twice. But it has been some time. I've been away from my collection for a long time here living in Japan. Um, Inferno I remember being really good. I think just because of its brevity and because of its importance, I'm going to put Spirit from Space just above it. But Inferno number 2, Silurians, I could swap these two. It really wouldn't matter, but they're both real. They're all really fantastic. Okay, the 8th season, I think they lightened up a little bit. They introduced the Master. The Master is brilliant. Like the original Master, Roger Delgado, is absolutely fantastic, but they overuse him, so he's in every serial in the 8th season, and it kind of gets trying. Terror of the Autons is, man, that's kind of a classic too. I really like Mind of Evil. I'd probably put it in B tier, but I still think that's really good. So going forward, even though each season is different, there's probably one episode in each of these seasons that feels like a season 7 show, where it's more serious, it's more real, it's completely earthbound, maybe not even aliens, like supernatural or something like that. Mind of Evil is definitely one of those. Claws of Axos, I really can't get into it. I think it's real mid. It's the Doctor and the Master are forced to work together temporarily, but you know how that's going to turn out, right? Kind of predictable. But there's aliens from another planet that pretend that they're going to be helpful for humans, but they're not. Colony from Space, also it's a tense drama and it's good sci-fi, but it's not. It just doesn't really fit with the third Doctor aesthetic, which is he's kind of more the action Doctor, and this is him kind of it's more talking and there's not a whole lot of action. And then the Doctor or the Master doesn't show up until kind of late in the story, so I put it in C tier. Damon's is S tier. I know. I guess it's kind of controversial. I think it was considered a classic for a long time, and then people reassessed it and kind of have different opinions on it. But to me, it's the perfect unit story because it really shows all the unit characters. It gives them something to do. It gives them arcs. It gives them personality. It has a lot of good dialogue. It's a really fun episode. And in my previous episodes, I think that I've given Doctor Who effortlessly is, or at least the classic Doctor Who in the prime. It's kind of effortlessly intellectual and academic and kind of bringing these big questions to bear, but sometimes it can be a little plotting. I think season 7 kind of falls flat in that because it isn't very fun. And Doctor Who should be a really fun show. And the Damons is sort of the perfect amalgamation of these two things. Like, we're going to show that the Doctor can just be fun and campy and great and lots of action and good, well, for the time, good effects. There's a helicopter, that's not cheap. There's like pyrotechnics, the Master's there, there's demons that are really aliens, because that's, how they do it. Demons is great. Day of the Daleks, it's hard to really put it in the real bottom. There's kind of a time loop story, but it's not super interesting. Curse of Peladon, S tier. Like, it's just brilliant. You just have to watch it. Sea Devils, I'm gonna put B tier. So it's the first time the Master is apprehended at the end of Damon's, and he comes back at least for one serial in every season from then on. Wow. Until Roger Delgado's death. But the Sea Devils is The Sea Devils themselves are boring. The idea of them is fine. They're basically relatives of the Silurians, but I don't know. The serial itself is okay. It's really you're watching it for the performances. So the interaction, the chemistry between Delgado and Pertwee is electric. They were good friends off screen. They were frenemies on screen, kind of like the original frenemies. Um, and that's what you watch it for. And for that, it's like if you're just watching it for that, it's pretty great, but not quite A tier. Let's see here. The Mutants. The Mutants is probably one that I don't remember too much. I'm just gonna put that on the bottom because I'm not sure about that one. I know the Time Monster is real bad. Tried to be unit story and it has some interesting unit, there's like character moments and stuff like that, but the overall thing is just too plotting. Um, Three Doctors is, oh man, that's maybe not quite S tier. That's real close, but that's great. The Three Doctors is fantastic. It's the first multi-doctor story, bringing back Hartnell, at least via video, and Troughton and Pertwee have great chemistry. There's a really good story with bringing in Omega and bringing in other Time Lords. This is sort of his first. This is his first time being allowed to travel in his TARDIS. So like after he does this favor for the Time Lords, who they need to deal with Omega, they give him back his TARDIS. I should have mentioned that like there's kind of this arc, at least in the first few series of Pertwee's era, and I think it's kind of a contrivance because he's stuck on Earth. So if he's stuck on Earth and they're trying to keep a low budget because they don't want to have to film in quarries because that's expensive apparently, or do lots of monster stuff. They're making things Earthbound for budgetary reasons. That's probably one of the reasons that the show was able to be saved because it was probably a pretty expensive show during the first two Doctor's eras. So part of that is, well, you have to do something with his TARDIS. The TARDIS must be broken. So there's kind of this arc where he's slowly trying to fix things using Earth technology and failing. So like he tries to fix it for the Inferno, and it shunts him into a, secondary, like a parallel dimension or whatever. In the colony in space, he thinks that he has, I don't know, replicated his important piece of his TARDIS, or he stole it from the Master. I think that's what it is. And so, but he still doesn't have control. So he tries to travel somewhere in his TARDIS, but the Time Lords hijack his TARDIS and they send him on his own mission or something like that. So he doesn't have freedom. He has the TARDIS. It's functional, but he can't control it. Doesn't have the control mechanism. I forget what the MacGuffin is, but they finally give it to him at the end of the Three Doctors in kind of repayment for him dealing with Omega. So now he's free to go wherever he wants. And the first thing that happens after that is Carnival Monsters. Carnival Monsters is a joy to watch. It's incredibly fun. I don't want to spoil anything. Just go watch it. Frontier in Space is also, that is A tier. I don't think it's quite S tier just because I think it drags a little too long. It's a 6-parter. Master comes back, but he's utilized pretty well. It's another one where he's not fighting monsters. He's actually trying to broker peace between humans and Draconians and far future space. It is kind of a classic, I would say. And then we have, what is this? I can't even read this one. Planet of the Daleks. Oh, that's right. Okay, Frontier Space leads into Planet of the Daleks, which is like a 90% retelling of the first Daleks story from 1963. It's in color. It has the Third Doctor. Is the Master there or something like he's working with the Daleks? It's really long and it's just a retread of everything. It doesn't do anything really original. I don't think it's very good. In fact, I think I can put it in D tier. And it's above Time Monster. Time Monster is a real stinker. Then we have Green Death. A lot of people are higher on this than I am. I think it is, as far as sort of pacing, and this is sort of the archetype for, or the template maybe I should say, of the kind of horror Fourth Doctor era. So in that respect, I think it's real solid. I would put it, yeah, I'd probably put it here, B tier. Some people say it's their absolute favorite story and has a ecological theme. There's kind of like mildly leftist politics that was injected in the Third Doctor era, which is really interesting. All right, Time Warrior, the first appearance of Sontarans. One of my absolute favorites. One of the first ones that I'm going to rewatch. First appearance of Sarah Jane. Oh yeah, I should say that, Katie Manning / Joe Grant left at the end of the Green Death. It's kind of the end of it's the first kind of goodbye of the unit era. Anyways, Sarah Jane comes in. She's kind of snookered into going with the Doctor. He goes back in time. She's separated from him immediately and gets kidnapped by some local, feudal lord or something like that. This is like, I don't know, 1200s, 1300s England, and Lynx, the original Sontaran, crash lands, and it's Robert Holmes at his absolute best, kind of dark satire of empire and conquest and stuff like that. And Lynx is brilliant. The Sontarans are a great enemy, and this is the origin of that. It's a pretty tight, well paced story, and most of its location shooting, so it looks really good. It's got Sontarans. It's easily top 5. Let's see here. Oh, Planet of the Dinosaurs. Or Invasion of the Dinosaurs. I'm sorry. So this is like they get back after Time Warrior. They get back to present time, and for some reason there's dinosaurs in London. It's a surprisingly okay serial. Like, the actual story is not great, but this is the one of the better unit stories, I think, because it really has all the unit characters are there. I think one of them's like, I don't know, has to betray the rest of them or something like that. I don't know. Next one, Death to the Daleks. I genuinely don't remember anything about this one. I'm going to put it C next to Mutants because it couldn't have been very memorable. Then we got Monster Paladin, which is also really not great. I'm going to put that probably in D tier. Planet of the Spiders is B. Okay, so real quick. Monster Paladin, Return to Paladin, sure, great, but it's a 6-parter. It's slower. It kind of betrays a lot of the messages of the first one. It doesn't have the same atmosphere. It doesn't have Jo Grant and her chemistry with, Patrick Troughton's son. But, I don't know, bottom of C, top of D. Anyway, it's not great. Planet of the Spiders. I have such mixed feelings about this because the effects of the actual, the spiders are really good. That's one of the things that I remember the most. Probably what made me an arachnophobe as a child was watching this serial and seeing these giant spiders and how just absolutely creepy they are, and the voice for them is just it's a thing to behold. It's really creepy. But everything that's outside of that set and everything that's not in that kind of dynamic, it's just gravel pits, and it plods a lot. It does regenerate. I mean, Pertwee dies. It's his last serial. He regenerates into the Fourth Doctor, so we get a little bit of Tom Baker at the end. The way the regeneration is handled is real weird. They didn't know what to do. I mean, there was a regeneration from the First Doctor and the Second Doctor, but at this point it's lost to time. It's 10 years ago at this point, and they don't have videotapes. They don't have BBC video to go rent or something. That's something that's lost even to this day. But it was just a fade, and then they don't show the Second and the Third Doctor, so they really kind of felt like they had carte blanche to do whatever they want, and they just had some weird kind of yellow face. Is supposed to be a Zen monk or something like that, or some sort of guru that's supposed to help the Doctor transition into his next life. And I think people forget about how weird and jarring that is compared to what we expect in modern Who as far as regeneration. Is just like a natural phenomenon. But between Third and Fourth Doctor and between Fourth and Fifth Doctor, they did some wild stuff. That is I mean, I guess it's canon. It's again, it's like canonicity of Doctor Who. What do you know? Uh, anyway, so but Spiders of Death is, I'm gonna put it kind of in the middle of B. It's pretty solid for what it's trying to do. It has really creepy moments. It is a very effective send off for the Doctor and kind of for the unit family. Um, but it fails in a lot of places too. So it's kind of mediocre, but it's also important and memorable. So here we go. I went through the entire third Doctor's oeuvre, his entire 5 seasons. At that point, which was historical, it had always been 3. Since then, that's kind of has become the standard now, is staying for 3 years. But Pertwee was incredibly popular. He became the definitive Doctor during his era, and of course that would be sort of subsumed by the incredible popularity of Tom Baker, which just like it happens today. There's a new Doctor comes in, people are really wary, and then they just decide they love him anyway. That was kind of what happened with Pertwee, and that's what happened with kind of every Doctor going forward. A couple notable exceptions, but really solid. Like there's a lot of stuff that's kind of on the plotting side, that is overlong, that is the effects are not great. They reuse a lot of sets and a lot of locations. You're gonna see a lot of the same quarries over and over again, but the actors, the characters, the chemistry between these actors really shines. It's the only time in Doctor Who that it was kind of an ensemble, and it worked. It worked. Like wouldn't think that would work. You had the Doctor and two, typically two companions, maybe one, maybe three, but two on average, going somewhere new every couple weeks. Well, this time you had a set of characters that you brought into a new situation every week or every couple of weeks. And they had to be good. They had to have the right chemistry. They had to work, and they do. The Master works. Katie Manning works. Jo Grant, Liz Shaw works. Sarah Jane works. Those are great classic companions. All 3 of them are fantastic. I wish Liz Shaw would have stuck around, because she was kind of a more like a super smart scientist, and they kind of got rid of her and brought Jo Grant in, who was just sort of, she's cute and she's sweet and she's there to scream and ask the Doctor questions, but she isn't really an intellectual equal as Liz Shaw really was in his first season. Anyway, I could go on forever. One of my favorite eras. These are the ones that you can't miss. I would say watch everything S, A, or B. You can probably skip C and D, but yeah. Anyway, all right, thanks for watching. Have a good one.